It was a late Thursday afternoon in early October when everything I thought I knew about my marriage slipped through my fingers like autumn leaves in the wind. I wasn't snooping. I never snooped. But while cleaning out the coat closet in our foyer, a battleground of forgotten receipts, tangled scarves, and mismatched gloves, I pulled out Grant's old leather jacket and gave it a shake. Something stiff fluttered to the floor. A Polaroid photo. I bent to pick it up without thinking, expecting an old holiday snapshot, maybe a dinner memory we'd tucked away during a trip to Telluride. But as the colors bloomed on the glossy surface, I froze. The image hit like a slap without sound. Two people pressed together, not a thread of clothing between them. And the man, broad shoulders, olive-toned skin, that faded birthmark at the base of his spine. I'd kissed that spot 100 times. It was my husband, Grant Whitman. But it wasn't just him that stunned me. It was the woman. Her face was turned away, caught mid-laugh or mid-lie, I couldn't tell. But her long chestnut curls, the way her chin tucked slightly into her collarbone, half shy, half posed, it sparked something too familiar to ignore. My stomach twisted. I gripped the photo harder than I meant to, crinkling its edge. Our home was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your own heartbeat sound like thunder. This was the same hallway where Grant and I had argued for hours over whether to paint the living room clouded pearl or evening ash. We'd laughed so hard when we both finally admitted we hated the final color. But now the walls felt close, fake in their warmth, like they were holding in something they shouldn't. The front door opened, making me jump. "Elaine, I'm home." Grant's voice echoed through the foyer, followed by the familiar clink of keys landing in the ceramic bowl I'd made him for our anniversary at a pottery class. That class he'd forgotten until his assistant reminded him. I shoved the photo deep into the back pocket of my jeans. I didn't have a plan yet, just a pit in my stomach and a sudden flush of heat in my cheeks. I dabbed at my face in the mirror by the stairs, forced color back into my expression, and walked down as if nothing had happened. Grant was loosening his tie, smiling like he hadn't just shattered something sacred. I was thinking of ordering Thai. "You want seafood noodles." "Sounds great," I said, my voice steady, almost too steady. I watched him cross the kitchen, the scent of his cologne drifting past me. But tonight, it wasn't just his usual cedarwood and citrus. There was something else in the air, something floral, feminine, not mine. That night, I lay in bed beside him, eyes wide open as he slept soundly. His breath was calm, rhythmic, his face relaxed like a man who hadn't just lit a match inside the walls of our life. I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I didn't even move. I just stared at the ceiling, heart pounding with a quiet decision forming in the dark. I needed to know who she was, and I wasn't going to ask him. I was going to find out for myself. 3 weeks later, I barely recognized the woman in the mirror. She looked like me, moved like me, wore the same wool coats and coffee-colored lipstick I always wore in the fall, but inside, something fundamental had shifted. Elaine Prescott, the woman who made Grant's coffee at 6:30 sharp every morning, who believed in late-night meetings and back-to-back conferences, was gone. What replaced her was colder, quieter, sharper. It began with his phone. Grant always left it face down on the nightstand, claiming the light from notifications disrupted his sleep. For years, I thought it was a quirk, maybe even considerate. Now it felt like a red flag I'd ignored for far too long. One Monday morning, as he stepped into the shower humming his usual tune, I picked it up with hands that didn't tremble. Face ID did its magic. The Messages app was clean. So was his email. Nothing out of place. But the call log a single number, showing up over and over again, late at night, during lunch breaks, weekends when he claimed to be at networking events. No name saved. I checked iMessage. Nothing. Then I noticed 2 unfamiliar apps tucked away in a utilities folder, Signal and Telegram, apps that left no traces. A new kind of panic settled in my chest, the kind that doesn't scream but coils, quiet and poisonous. He was hiding more than a woman. He was hiding a second life. 2 days later, while he was out jogging, I searched his car. Grant hated anyone touching his car. It was his sacred space. I knew if I did this, I couldn't be clumsy. But I had to know. Under the lining of the glove box, behind the emergency manual, was a second phone. It was dusty, maybe forgotten, maybe meant to be found. I took it home and charged it. As soon as it turned on, a notification popped up. Signal. One message, preview, lit up the screen. My love. Miss you already. Sunday dinner's gonna be hard to fake again. My love. Not babe, not sweetheart. My love. It sounded permanent. And Sunday dinner? That was my family's tradition. A once-a-month ritual at my parents' house in Lakewood, where we grilled steaks under the oak trees and my dad brought out wine saved for special moments. Grant had never cared for those dinners, but recently he insisted on attending. Even suggested we invite Marissa last time. The thought hit me like ice water down my spine. Marissa Langley. She was 28, a few years younger than me, my cousin on my mother's side. We grew up together, shared bedrooms during summer breaks, wrote in each other's journals. When her life fell apart 2 years ago, messy divorce, job loss, depression, I let her stay in our guest room for nearly 9 months. Grant never complained. In fact, he was oddly supportive of her being around. Said it was good for the family. I remembered her long chestnut curls, the way she tilted her head when laughing. I remember the night she came down in my silk robe and said she couldn't sleep, and how I thought it was sweet when Grant got up to make her chamomile tea. I thought it was kindness. God, I began connecting everything, his meetings in Boulder that never matched his calendar, receipts from a boutique flower shop I'd never heard of, the hotel bill from a weekend when he said he was visiting his brother in Aspen. I went back through our credit card statements, scanned Uber rides, restaurant bookings, every detail suddenly laced with betrayal. The final thread came from a message I found tucked in the encrypted chat history. That trip to Pine Lake when we were kids. Do you remember the red pickup truck? Grant didn't grow up in Colorado. He was born in New Hampshire. He didn't even know where Pine Lake was. But Marissa did. My hands clenched the phone. My breath stopped halfway through my chest. It wasn't just someone. It was her. And if I was right, then the woman who betrayed me wasn't just sharing my husband's bed. She was sharing my bloodline, my family dinners, and smiling at me across the table like nothing had happened. Sunday dinner used to be my favorite ritual. Grilled steaks in the backyard, my mom's rosemary potatoes, the hum of quiet jazz from Dad's old speaker, and the kind of stories only told when everyone's had just enough wine. But that evening it all felt artificial, like I was watching a play I used to star in, now stuck in the audience with no lines to speak. We were gathered at my parents' home in Lakewood, the backyard strung with golden bulbs that cast soft halos over everyone's heads. My brother and his wife sat at the head of the table with their twins. My dad uncorked a Merlot he'd been saving for 5 years. My mom wore the apron I gave her for Christmas. And there, sitting 2 chairs away from Grant, was Marissa, wearing a silk olive dress that shimmered in the light, her chestnut curls falling perfectly over one shoulder, a glass of white wine in her hand, her smile effortless, like a woman perfectly at ease in a life that wasn't hers. And Grant, God, he played his part so well, laughing with my father about a new stock fund, offering to help my mother in the kitchen, complimenting my niece's drawing, but he never once looked at me. Not directly. He looked past me, around me, or at her. Then it happened. A moment so quick, so deliberate, it could have been missed if I'd blinked. His eyes paused at her wrist, where a delicate silver bracelet glinted in the candlelight. I knew that bracelet. I'd seen it in a transaction 3 weeks earlier. A boutique in Cherry Creek we'd never visited together. Marissa noticed. She tucked her hand behind her back, and then she laughed. Light, breezy, like nothing had happened. My heart didn't pound. It didn't break. It hardened. Cold, still, like the weight of granite resting quietly on my ribs. I didn't say a word. I simply waited. After dinner, while the others drifted inside to watch the Rockies game, I excused myself and headed upstairs. I knew Marissa would have used the bathroom off the guest hallway. She always did. Her beige leather purse was sitting on the marble sink, unzipped. I didn't hesitate. I pulled out her phone. Still the same lock code she'd used since high school, 0604. Toby's birthday. The golden retriever we both loved like a sibling. Part of me wanted to be wrong. Truly, I wanted to open that phone and find nothing. I wanted to feel foolish. But the moment I tapped the Signal app, I knew I wasn't. Hundreds of messages. L for Lucas in the original story, now G for Grant. Grant, I dreamed about you last night. Woke up thinking you were still in bed beside me. Marissa, Sunday dinners are getting harder. I hate pretending. Grant, 1 more week. We'll tell her soon. Then it's freedom. Marissa, Elaine will never understand. She's always been too sensitive. Too sensitive that one broke something. My grip on the phone tightened, fingers whitening around the edges. I took screenshots of everything. Messages, photos, a GPS pin of the apartment Grant had been visiting on his business trips, all lined up with his calendar, every lie matching a timestamp. The final blow? A message from just 5 days earlier. Grant, the apartment's perfect. I can see us starting over here. Marissa, 1 more week. I'll talk to her after the dinner. They were planning to leave, not just emotionally, physically, a full reset, behind my back, while sleeping in my house, eating my food, laughing with my family. And Marissa, the woman I'd paid tuition for when she couldn't finish her degree, the one I pulled out of a depressive spiral 2 years ago, the one who cried in my lap over a cheating ex, and slept in our guest room when she had nowhere else to go. She'd taken my husband, my home, my trust, and now she was about to take the future I'd spent a decade building. I set her phone back exactly where I found it, walked to the hallway mirror, looked at my reflection under the flickering sconces. My lips didn't quiver, my eyes didn't water, but I said the words out loud for the first time. This ends now. I didn't scream. I didn't confront them after dinner. I hugged my parents goodbye, smiled when Marissa kissed my cheek, let Grant wrap his arm around my shoulder like nothing had changed. But that night I didn't sleep. I sat in my home office, surrounded by shadows and silence, and began assembling my arsenal. I started with the bank. Grant and I had one shared investment portfolio, opened 5 years ago using a fund my parents gifted us as seed capital for a future restaurant, Marissa's dream project, back when she still pretended to admire me. I logged in. Transfers. Thousands. All to a second account, not under my name, one I'd never seen. I pulled the records, highlighted every transaction that matched a hotel stay or a furniture invoice. The Cherry Creek apartment, candles, linens, imported tea. They were nesting. Next, I retrieved the old iPad Grant had accidentally cracked 2 months ago. He said it was useless now, just scrap. But after 2 hours and a borrowed HDMI cable, I brought it back to life. Inside, synced under a second iCloud alias, were PDFs of lease agreements, calendar events tied to locations miles from where he claimed to be, and emails from someone listed only as M. They spoke in code. The loft is ready. The final transfer cleared. Can't wait to decorate together. They thought I'd never find it. They were wrong. I copied everything onto an external hard drive, labeled it tax year 2022, and hid it in the back of the winter sweater drawer. Grant never opened that one. Too many zippers, he once said. Then I moved on to audio and video. I ordered a tiny microphone disguised as a ceramic diffuser and placed it on Grant's desk. It picked up every call he took when I was asleep. I installed a discreet camera inside a hollowed-out book on the living room shelf, aimed directly at the spot he loved to sit for his late-night calls with China. I heard nothing about China, but I did hear "I miss you." I hate lying to her, and it's all hers, but she doesn't know it yet. I knew, and it wasn't all mine, not anymore. But I would take back what still was. I hired a private investigator, a small firm out of Colorado Springs with no online presence, recommended by a friend who went through her own quiet war. I used my maiden name, Elaine Conway, just in case. I handed them photos of Grant and Marissa, a list of his recent trips, and told them nothing except, follow the trail. Don't talk to anyone. And don't stop until you've found everything. 3 days later, they delivered. 36 pages, full-color images, timestamps, locations, Marissa and Grant entering and exiting the same apartment building. Marissa wearing a hat Grant had once bought for me on a ski trip. Grant brushing her hair behind her ear as they sat in his car. But what made my blood run cold wasn't the intimacy. It was the timing. All of it, every meeting, every overnight, had happened while I was in Dallas, caring for my mother after her spinal surgery. I had left home for 3 weeks to manage medications, meals, doctor visits, while Grant pretended to hold down the fort and Marissa emailed the family from Paris. I pulled up the emails. Eiffel Tower, macarons, cobblestone streets. I forwarded them to a college friend who worked in digital media. Her reply came in minutes. Elaine, these are stock photos. I literally used this same crepe image in a blog post last spring. Paris never happened. The exhibition was a lie. Everything was a lie. But what wasn't a lie was the fire now moving through my veins, clean and steady. The time for shock had passed. Now came the part they weren't ready for, the reveal. I chose a Saturday evening, the perfect stage. 1 week before Grant was set to be officially announced as a partner at Whitestone Partners. He'd been bragging about it for months, how the board finally recognized his value, how he'd be the youngest partner in the firm's Colorado branch, how we'd finally be real players in the game. I let him believe it. I sent out invitations to both sides of the family, called it a private celebration dinner, hired a private chef from Boulder, arranged a 7-course menu. My mother's favorite lilies were delivered in cream ceramic vases, placed carefully around the house. I even picked out Grant's favorite playlist, smooth jazz, cello heavy, the kind of music that makes people feel safe. The dining room was pristine, white linen napkins folded into fans, gold-trimmed china, and in the corner, mounted on the wall just above our old fireplace, was the 65-inch television screen. Grant assumed I'd prepared a tribute video, pictures of his career, interviews, little jokes, and family messages. He had no idea. As guests began arriving, I played my role to perfection. I greeted everyone with warm smiles, poured wine, complimented outfits. Grant looked at me more than usual that night, maybe sensing something different, maybe just proud to show off his polished, elegant wife. He leaned in and whispered, "You've outdone yourself, Lane. You've always been my calm before the storm." I smiled, straightened his collar, and whispered back, "Let's give them a night to remember." And then she arrived. Marissa, tight black cocktail dress, deep brown-red lipstick, hair swept over one shoulder like she was walking into a gala, not a family home. She kissed my cheek like nothing had happened. "You look amazing, Elaine," she said, eyes flicking to Grant. "You both do." "Thank you," I replied evenly. "You look radiant." Everyone gathered at the long table. Grant stood first to speak, raised his glass, thanked everyone for coming, thanked me for organizing such a beautiful evening. "I couldn't have done this without Elaine," he said, smiling at me. "She's been my foundation, my partner, and the reason I'm standing where I am." He lifted his glass toward me. Everyone clinked. My hand barely trembled. Before dessert, I stood. "I wanted to share something," I said, my voice calm and measured. A small look back at the journey, at the truth behind it all. I pressed the remote. The screen flickered to life. It began just as they expected. Photos of our wedding, laughter in the sunlight under a floral arch family vacations, ski trips, my father chuckled softly. My mother dabbed her eyes. Grant reached over and squeezed my hand. I let him. Then the screen shifted. The first image. Grant, standing in the hallway of an apartment building in Cherry Creek. Marissa stepping out behind him, their hands brushing. The second, a cropped screenshot of their signal messages. Pretending gets harder each Sunday. She'll never understand. The third, a lease agreement, signed by Grant Whitman and Marissa Langley. Gasps. A child dropped a spoon. I stepped out from behind my chair, into the center of the room. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I spoke with the clarity of someone who no longer needed to doubt her truth. I thought everyone deserved to know what's been happening, I said. Behind the carefully curated image. Behind the lies. Grant stood, abruptly, pale. Elaine, please. This is a mistake. You don't understand. I raised a hand. I understand perfectly. Click. Another slide. Bank transfers. From our joint account to a private one. Labeled Home, Furnishings, CC Apartment. Click. A hidden camera photo taken in our own home. My office. Grant and Marissa. His arm wrapped around her waist. Her head on his shoulder. Marissa shot up. Elaine, wait, it's not. I turned toward her slowly. You never left the state, Marissa. That Paris trip? Those photos? Stock images. I have the originals from a design database. You were here. With him. While I was taking care of Mom. My father stood, lips trembling. Marissa, is that true? Marissa's silence was the clearest confession in the room. But that's not all, I continued. Marissa's upcoming art exhibit? Built on fake credentials and conflict of interest. A relationship with her sponsor. That sponsor being my husband. Click. An email. To Hart and Bell Gallery subject. Immediate termination of representation content. We do not represent artists involved in unethical relationships with funders. Elaine, Grant hissed, voice rising, you're going to destroy everything. No, I replied coldly. You already did. I'm just turning on the lights. He collapsed into his chair, face in hands. Marissa stood, eyes wide, as if the floor might swallow her whole. I reached into the drawer by the fireplace and pulled out 2 envelopes. Walked slowly back to the table. For you, Grant. I slid the first one toward him. Divorce papers. If you sign them tonight under the terms outlined, I won't forward evidence of your conduct to Whitestone's board. I won't go public. But if you delay, I'll let the headlines write themselves. He stared at the envelope like it was a death sentence. And for you, I said, turning to Marissa, a formal waiver of inheritance from our family's estate, and a detailed repayment plan for the tuition, rent, travel costs, and medical bills I covered over the past 5 years, plus interest. She blinked, tears welling. Elaine, you're joking, right? I shook my head. No, and if you refuse, I'll make sure every gallery from Boston to LA sees the screenshots. She touched the envelope, then froze. You once said I was the only person you trusted, I said softly, and I kept your secrets until you made me your fool. My mother rose, her voice cracking. Elaine, how long have you been carrying this? I looked at her, finally letting the weight touch my face. Long enough to know I'm done protecting people who break me. Silence stretched across the room like a noose. No one moved. The only sound was the soft clink of a wine glass trembling in someone's hand. Grant's eyes were locked on the divorce papers, lips parted, throat working to form words that never came. Marissa, still standing, still blinking, as if the sheer weight of shame hadn't yet settled on her shoulders. My father stepped back from the table and sat down slowly, his face carved in something between disbelief and heartbreak. My mother remained standing, her hand still resting lightly on my shoulder, as though afraid I might shatter if she let go. Then Marissa opened her mouth. You once said you'd always protect me. I didn't blink. And you once said I was the only one you trusted. A beat of silence. The difference is I kept my word. You didn't. She looked down at the envelope again, fingers trembling. Her mascara was beginning to smudge. Grant finally spoke, barely above a whisper. Do you really want to ruin me like this? I turned to him slowly, my voice cold, quiet, but unwavering. I'm not ruining anything. You did that the moment you decided to betray me with her. His shoulders sank. His hands, once so steady and confident, curled into themselves. Marissa glanced at my parents, at the rest of the table. No one met her gaze. Even the twins, my nieces, looked away. No one moved to comfort her. No one stood up for her. Finally, with a sharp inhale, she pulled a pen from her purse and signed the waiver. Her hand shook. A single tear dropped onto the paper, darkening the corner where her name had just been written. She didn't speak. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She simply placed the pen down, quietly, like a child handing in a failed test. I gathered both envelopes, his and hers, and slid them into my leather satchel. Thank you for coming tonight, I said softly, scanning the room. I'm sorry this wasn't the celebration you expected, but I believe the truth always deserves a place at the table. I turned to walk away, but my father stood again. Elaine, he said, voice firmer now, you don't owe anyone an apology. They do. And from this moment on, you are not alone. You never will be again. My mother nodded beside him, wiping a tear from her cheek. Family won't leave you behind this time. Marissa stepped toward me, slightly, as if to say something. I took one step back, not out of rage, but out of understanding. The distance between us could no longer be measured in feet. Grant rose from his chair, clutching the envelope. I'll sign, he muttered. I looked him in the eye for the last time. Save your explanation, I said. You'll need it for the ethics meeting at your firm on Monday. A soft, dry laugh escaped from one of the guests. No one was smiling, but everyone understood. The mask had fallen. The act was over. The audience had seen the real show. And I, for the first time in a long time, felt still. It's been a year. I live alone now, in a sixth-floor apartment overlooking Washington Park. Floor-to-ceiling windows let the morning sun spill over my new life. Soft, slow, deliberate. I wake up to birdsong, not alarms. I read the paper with a cappuccino in hand, next to a lavender pot I planted the day I moved in. The scent is delicate. It reminds me that I'm still growing. I don't pour coffee for anyone else anymore. I don't ask what they want for dinner. I don't listen to lies disguised as affection. What I do instead is breathe. Fully, deeply, without apology. My career at the preservation firm has entered a new chapter. After landing the Houston Municipal Restoration contract last spring, I was promoted to lead architect on 2 heritage sites. It's a role I used to turn down, too busy caring, covering, shrinking. Not anymore. As for Grant, he no longer lives in Denver. After an internal ethics investigation at Whitestone for misuse of company resources and failure to disclose personal conflicts, he wasn't fired, but he was transferred quietly to the Salt Lake City branch. His promotion vanished. So did his speaking gigs. His LinkedIn update stopped. He sent me one email. I never opened it. Marissa? She left. This time she really went to Paris, not for an exhibit, but to disappear. She sent me 3 handwritten letters. The first blamed the pressure of family. The second, 5 pages long, apologized for everything. The third was short, just one line. I wish I could go back. I understand if you can't forgive me. I kept them in the bottom drawer of my desk, not to dwell on what happened, but to remind myself I didn't need closure to move forward. My living room walls are now olive green, the exact color Grant once called dull and depressing. I painted them anyway, hung my own charcoal sketches on them, lines I drew during weekends alone, learning how to turn stillness into strength. Sometimes I'll walk down the grocery aisle and catch sight of things that used to belong to my old life. his favorite mint ice cream, a red scarf Marissa borrowed once. They don't hurt anymore. They're just objects now. Footnotes. The pain, the betrayal, the silence, they no longer define me. They carved space for something deeper. Last weekend, I sat with my mother at a small cafe near Cheeseman Park. She reached across the table, squeezed my hand, and said, "You're the strongest one in this family." I smiled, not because I needed her to say it, but because I already knew. They thought I was soft, quiet, fragile, but it was my silence that brought them down. I didn't destroy them. I let their lies collapse under their own weight. And I walked out, not burning the house, just taking back the light.